Hello and welcome to Daft Souls, episode number 31. For those of you who are fans may have noticed that's the first episode in 3 episodes in a row in which I've definitely known the number of the episode upon starting it. And this week it is just another 2-man podcast. It's me joined by Mr. Stephen Hogarty.
Hello, how's it going?
So this week it is Matt and Steve's amazing Daft Souls.
Yes, it is.
And what have you been playing recently?
I've been playing a little old zombie game called Resident Evil.
Resident Evil?
Yes, both the HD remake, remaster, redone, re-special, re-release on PC, and a little bit of Revelations 2, which is the next one that's coming out.
Interesting. Because I've never played the first Resident Evil for longer than about 10 minutes, I think. I remember the bit where the dogs jumped through the window.
That's maybe Resident Evil 2. I made this mistake constantly. I conflate Resident Evil 1 and 2.
No, because it was in a mansion. And
yes.
The first one's in a mansion.
Second one's in a police station, mostly.
Yes. I actually think I played the second one more, because I remember the second one a bit more.
Second one is the best one.
I think it is better. People say that. But yeah, everyone's been going, who Donkey Lally all over
Lally about Resident Evil.
About Resident Evil.
Yeah, it's weird. You play it and you go, like, it looks amazing. It's got so many polygons, Matt, you wouldn't even believe.
How many more?
It's probably got 50,000 polygons per character.
That sounds like a lot.
I think it's overkill personally.
And all of those are actual triangles attached to them.
Yeah, and there's lighting. There's MIP mapping. I don't know if you remember MIP mapping, Matt.
The MIP mapping. Yeah, it was I think after the Harlem Shake, wasn't it?
Yes. But you look at it and you go, yeah, this is what Resident Evil 1 looked like. Like, they barely improved it. Maybe some of the lighting's a bit better. And you go back and you look at the original Resident Evil 1. If you haven't seen it in a while, I implore you to go back and take a look at how it looks. Watch a YouTube video or something. It looks awful. It looks like a cartoon. It's really weirdly crap looking.
Well, that era was very odd, like, for visuals. I remember, like, a lot of PlayStation 1 stuff, because I started playing, I think, on my PSP. I started, like, may have been not 100% above board, but I started playing some PlayStation 1 games on my PSP. I remember playing Vagrant Story. And there's lots of things like we had this weird system where sometimes, I don't know why games used to do it, but they used to have, like, textures that would wobble as you moved around. I don't know how that happened, but do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I've been reading about this for some reason, about why the textures wobbled on PlayStation 1 games. The reason I've been reading about it, I don't know if you're like Unity, the popular 3D engine that a lot of indie gamers make their 3D games in, and professional AAA titles use it these days. Someone's released a shader for Unity which emulates that old PlayStation 1 style.
Wow.
With wobbly textures and like low resolution 3D models and stuff. It looks amazing. So that might be ushering in like a new era of PlayStation 1 looking retro games.
That means like people will then like we were about 3 years off, people getting pissed off being like, God, not another PS1 era retro game. I'm so tired of this bullshit. In the same way you get people like, I find it bizarre when you have people on the internet getting angry about pixelated graphics and be like, oh, not another pixel art game.
I hate pixels.
I'm not playing one of them. It's like, does it matter? Like, doesn't make the game any different.
And it's not, people like to say it's like, oh, they're trying to force like a retro aesthetic on it. But for the most part, it's because indie developers don't have much money.
No.
And pixel art is really cheap to do.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, you just sort of think, what is the level at which, like, I guess it depends what your skills are as well. Like, if you've got somebody who's actually a bit better at, like, 3D modelling and textures and stuff, then sure. But if you've got someone who's just a good artist, just do pixel art, because it's just moving art. That's easy. But, yeah, just getting a nice style. Actually, it's funny, because I talked about it a bit last time, I've been playing a Dungeon of the Endless, which is, like, all pixel art, and it's just incredibly charming, because it's just, like, the way that all the characters move, and they have all these awesome little animations. And the game they've made since is, like, really beautiful, but somehow, like, doesn't have quite the same charm in a weird way, because they've sort of like overblown it into big 3D land.
Well, it's definitely a good thing that we've reached a point in technology that we have like a breadth of aesthetics all the way down to like pixel art from like the NES era up to like AAA.
It's good for me because
MIP mapping. Because
you've had a dabble at making like games, haven't you? I've seen some of your stuff. You tried to make an NHS simulator. Or an NHS...
It was a first-person NHS dismantling simulator
so
in which you had to bring NHS documents to different MPs around an emulated Westminster and have them stamp it.
Unfortunately, you lost that, didn't you? I think.
Yeah, I formatted my hard drive and forgot. First, forgot to take it off the hard drive and back it up.
If that had been like a crowdfunded game, you would have been in some hot sauce.
I would have been in trouble. Yeah,
Imagine that update.
I'm not very good at making games. I can't back up my files.
I don't know. I saw a bit of it running and it looked quite impressive to me. Because increasingly, I find as I get older, maybe it's just, you realise how many years can you spend spinning around on this godforsaken rock, pointing at other things and going, oh, this is quite good, before you sort of think, maybe I should have a go at doing it myself.
Well, what happens is you make an animation of someone holding an NHS document and you go, that's pretty funny. And you put it on the internet, everyone goes, yeah, that's pretty funny. As you're making a good game there. And you go, okay, now to spend 50 thankless hours turning it into an actual game that people can play.
Yeah.
That's the boring bit that no one wants to do. So
yeah. No, I think it's the same. I kind of want to make Dragon Rally, but I think after I'd worked out how to make a car with a dragon in it that flips around.
Yeah, you'll giggle while you're doing the Photoshop, and then you'll go to put it in a game, and you have to do like logarithms and equations and programming.
Yeah.
That's the boring bit.
To be honest, I end up like doing my own nutting just using After Effects sometimes because I realise I made a huge mistake about half an hour ago and need to then jury rig together some hellish thing. No, I'm not doing it. I've changed my mind. I'm not doing it. But if I do it, it will look like a crap PlayStation 1 game. And everyone will go, oh, wasn't this twee?
Do you have jingles like on our other podcast that we do together?
In this one? No, we have an intro music thing at the start.
And then we just meander from topic to topic.
We literally just meander. Okay. It's like a free range farm of a podcast.
Nice.
But usually you do just keep it together because obviously all of the guests are of a very high calibre. But anyway, on the topic of zombies, actually, I'll talk a little bit about what I've been playing. I've been playing loads of stuff recently. I've been continuing my kind of mobile thing, just because I'm a mobile person now. I'm a human on the move. Mm-hmm. Played a bit of the Swapper on PS Vita.
Is this like a swinging thing? Swapping wives?
No, that's something you do in Clapham Junction on Saturday nights.
Okay.
On a bus as well. But no, I've been doing this on a bus and it's not like that.
Swapping.
It's like a little story about a little spaceman and you can make clones of yourself and swap between them using a magic torch. It makes it sound like a 90s children's TV like show on Saturday morning.
Well, kids in the 90s, they all had magic torches.
Everyone.
Magic coins, magic crayons.
You had Jamie and the magic torch.
Yeah.
You had David and the magic torch. You had Stevie's magic torch.
Yeah.
You had Jeremy's torch of magic.
Torch of magic. The controversial torch of magic.
Yeah. The list goes on. But yeah, it's good. I've only played it for about 3 or 4 hours, but it's got some nice puzzles. But I think what I've been liking about it is I've been playing it with headphones and turning the music up too loud, and it does that kind of like Space 2001 thing of having like really kind of intense like woo, like really bassy kind of like spookiness. It reminds me a lot of The Dig. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah.
I never got very far in The Dig because
It's
it was
Steven Spielberg point and click, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was one of those LucasArts games that at that era the internet didn't really exist in the same way, and it meant that if you got stuck in a point and click game, which you always did, you just had to either play it for an hour every day until you somehow forced your neurons into trying something new, or you had to have a friend at school who knew how to do it.
Yep. My dad at the time, and he still does, worked for a subsidiary of IBM in Dublin. So he worked in an office. Can you believe?
Wow.
And he had access to this new thing called the internet and a printer. And
wow.
I would send him away to print out walkthroughs of all the games I was stuck on, and he'd come back with like a thick ream of walkthroughs, like the Donkey Kong Country walkthroughs, like SNES era, being able to go on the internet and get SNES walkthroughs.
That's
I was
good.
like, I'd go around my class like telling people how to get past certain things or find certain golden bananas.
Yeah.
I was very popular.
You must have been like the guru.
Yeah.
Ask Stephen.
Yeah.
Stephen, where can we find this specific golden banana?
I did hide in the closet in a cloak, dispensing games wins wisdom.
Let me do the readings. You're like, what's it called? Like Joseph, the guy?
Fritzl.
No, you weren't like Joseph Fritzl. That's a different kind of man behind a curtain.
Yeah.
I was talking about the guy with the golden plates, the Mormon chap. What's he called?
Oh.
You know, the guy who was like, oh no, I can't show you where I get the golden banana.
Ian Merman.
It wasn't Ian Mormon.
The founder
Joseph Mormon.
of Mormonism, yes.
But yeah, going behind a curtain and not letting anyone else see the sacred document of the bananas. And then burying
I
it.
could have said the walkthrough involves telling Steve he's amazing and giving praise to Steve every day.
You could have like started a cult. I think if you'd just been a bit more charismatic and a little bit more forceful,
Yeah, that's true.
you could have had the golden banana cult.
Wow.
Different world. But anyway, the swapper is it's a bit like the dig in terms of this spooky atmosphere, and you're like have this thing of like because you're swapping between different copies of yourself, you have this question of being like, A, what's going on with this? Because like a lot of the time the puzzles involve you letting previous clones that you inhabited with your soul about 2 seconds ago fall to their death with a crunch.
Well, it sounds like this film where David Bowie was playing Tesla. What is it?
Don't say that. Don't say what it is because that's a massive spoiler for the film. But I know exactly what you mean. It's a really good film. Anyway, but it is.
Yes. Shit.
a substantial
If you're halfway
spoiler.
through and you've seen David Bowie as Tesla,
You're like,
now you're going to know.
Suddenly you're going to be quite angry with Steve. So I apologize about that. Anyway, it's just weird because you sort of think like, who am I? Am I even a human? I don't even know what's going on here. But it's just good in the fact it's got my mind being like, there's something quite dark about creating lots of clones of yourself and then watching them die all the time, and you're like, which one? What is this? And it
So are
has
the clones from the
telepathic
past
sounds.
are they like standing on switches for you and stuff to
Yeah.
let you through? That sounds good.
But it has this thing of when you move left or right, like you move all of your clones. So that's a big part of the puzzles. Is often it's like, well, how do I? It's often about the order of how you do things, and you can only ever make 4 clones at a time, and you can swap between them. But then there's like you can't put your swap beam through red light, and you can't put clones in blue light. And
Obviously. Everyone knows you can't put your swap beam through red light.
I know, right? I'm just not. I was surprised by that. Okay, personally,
That's elementary stuff.
I guess I'm just not down with this stuff.
That reminds me a bit of I'm just going to half remember like a browser game I played probably 10 years ago now, which is it was like an isometric thing. You had to press buttons using your mouse cursor, but then as the levels progressed, you could press a button to conjure up your mouse cursor from 10 seconds ago, which would go around and click on the things that you clicked on. So you'd have to click on things in a certain order, rewind time, have your cursor come back and do the same things again while you clicked on new
you do
things.
something else, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very interesting. I like the time warping games. Good fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun. There's no time warpy stuff that I know of in this, but it's just fascinating. And it's just one of those things where, like, you've got weird telepathic rocks, and it's like the classic thing of being like, what happened to this space station, and why is everybody dead, and all that. But done in a way that I'm like, this is really chilling. And also, they've done this weird thing with the graphics where it looks like everything's been made out of like plasticine. It's like you can tell it's all like really dramatically darkly lit, but everything has this weirdly handmade, almost clay-like look.
Like Chicken Run.
It is a bit like Chicken Run. I'll tell you what it actually reminds me of, because it's all like clearly handmade, modelled look, but also handmade models of things that are like metallic and things that are like spaceshipy. It's like a gritty version of Clangers.
Oh wow, that's such a good. Oh,
It's really good.
that art style is I like that. That's very good.
It's very cool. It's very cool. But actually, I've been playing another zombie game this week, which has really blown me away. Partially because I kind of expected it to be total shit. And it isn't. And that's Dying Light. Because Dying Light, I was expecting it to be like, it's a Techland game.
So that's why you expect it to be total shit.
Precisely, right?
It's a sequel. It's not really a sequel to Dead Island, but it kind of is.
Well, that's the thing, is I actually feel bad about this, because it was only a joke. It was only japes, like. But last year, or the year before, or however long ago it was, at Gamescom, I actually went up to some of the guys, some of the Polish dudes who were making Dying Light from Techland, and I gave them a Video Gamer Award for Deja Vu, just because Dying Light looked like another... Oh, look, it's another game with zombies.
Open world zombie survival game.
And the guy was like, trying to say, oh, no, actually, it's not. Like, and, he was quite frightening.
You're just like, take the award, it'll be funny. Come on, just do it.
Well, it was a combination of him trying to, like, be like, no, actually, it's not just Dead Island again.
Did he crack the award over his knee and hand it back to you?
He's quite an intimidating guy. I've got to be honest, I was actually frightened. That was the one, there was a few times doing that. Before I did those, no, it must have been E3, because it was the first time I did those awards. It was E3, and the first time I did that, I was like, I thought it was going to be really fun. But then when you actually get to it and you realise you've got to go up to somebody and hand them this thing, especially if they're somebody who looks quite stern and frightening anyway, you sort of think, are they going to punch me? Like, am I going to get punched? I mean, that would have been cool in some ways. That would have meant I actually had become Dennis Pennis of the gaming world. But at the same time, I don't want to get punched.
No.
But anyway, I feel bad now because actually this guy, they were trying to say at the time, it's not Dead Island again. And it was like, fuck off, it is Dead Island again.
It's got zombies in it.
Warner Brothers has basically just gone, hey, can you make us a Dead Island? Because
Yeah.
it makes loads of money. And they go, yeah, all right. It's not Dead Island at all. And I'm really surprised by that because you've got all the Dead Island stuff of making weapons and using weapons to violently bludgeon people to death. And to be fair, it is still a Techland game in the fact that the way you bludgeon stuff to death is still just like so violent that sometimes it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. Because you saw a bit of it.
I was
earlier.
watching you play it, and like you have like cricket bats with spikes in them, and it makes like clonking sounds when you smash them, and they cartwheel, and you can see their skeletons like in Sniper Elite, and blood comes out, and heads come off.
Yeah, heads just smash open. It's very violent.
It's quite gross.
Which at first was a bit like, whoa, okay. But then what I liked about it was what little I played of Dead Island felt like it was just this thing of it was basically just a combat-based RPG where you just keep smashing zombies to death and then you get more points and then you get better at smashing zombies to death and then you just keep doing that. Whereas in this, there's a much bigger emphasis on the idea of actually behaving like you would in real life, i.e. of like fighting stuff when you need to fight stuff, but most of the time just running away or like running past. Because it's a big open world, and a lot of the time you just like, get over here. And after the interminable introduction with a fucking shit story, like the story's bollocks, and it
I
still
watched
has
you do
that.
that as well.
Oh, you did the other day
Yeah.
when you ran it. It's just like, let me just stop doing this jumping
There's some guy just
tutorial.
making lots of like nerd cool references.
Oh,
like,
he kept calling me a noob.
you're a noob. No one's used the word noob in like 10 years.
Oh, it was so bad. That was the point where I was literally thinking, I'm not going to play this game ever again. I thought, I'm halfway through a tutorial and I cannot be fucked, which is something I often get now. Maybe I'm just getting old. But I'm really glad I persisted with it because it has this thing of like, it's an open world game, but it doesn't have too much stuff to do. It's not like the map is cluttered with things. But what I love about it is that it does that kind of Elder Scrolls thing of you level up your main survival ability just by playing the game and doing missions, and that gives you like just generic new abilities. But Dead Island was really bad for the whole like get a 5% bonus when using swords.
Oh wow! Ooh,
Get a
that's
10% bonus.
that gets you excited, doesn't
Yeah.
it? 5% damage bonus.
Oh. Something that Borderlands does badly as well a lot of the time, but having skill trees which are largely just filled with stuff, it's like, who gives a fuck about that? Like, it becomes about like either like builds. The best case scenario is like, oh, you can have a build that specifically focuses on this. It's boring.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, it's like right from the start, it's like, it seems to me that a lot of the skill tree stuff is related to how do you want to play the game. So it's like one of the first skills I ignored, for example, is like, hey, have twice as many weapons in your inventory. I'm like, no, I don't really do that much fighting, so I'm just not going to do that. Whereas
You do like parkour and you run around and you climb over stuff.
well, that's the thing is you've got like your main survival abilities just do like a whole bunch of stuff, allow you to like do different things. But then you have the combat abilities just improve through combat. So if you spend all your time going around braining zombies, you will level up your combat ability quickly.
Oh, cool.
But if like me, you spend your time just doing parkour and just running around and climbing up stuff, you level that up. So it's a bit like, do you remember in Crackdown of that whole thing of like, the reason in Crackdown you ended up leaping on buildings like a nutter constantly was because there were orbs at the top.
Yes.
Well, there aren't any orbs at the top of anything, and it's very light on collectibles in the world, which I'm pleased about because I can't stand that shit anymore. But it means that because just climbing up stuff that's difficult or just making big jumps or just jumping around is just constantly leveling up your ability to do it better.
Reminds me very much of how Morrowind's
Yes.
RPG system used to work. Like it would level you up into the things that you did.
Yep.
Which meant that anyone who knew how to game a system in the most basic sense would just jump everywhere.
I
'Cause the
remember.
more you jumped, the higher you can jump.
I remember playing Morrowind, and the way I played Morrowind was I was like, well, multitasking, I'm going to become very good at athletics and healing magic. And the way I did that was just by repeatedly jumping off a cliff, breaking my legs,
Yeah.
and then healing myself, and then walking back up the cliff again and doing it again. That's how you get better at jumping,
Well,
apparently.
you can employ this in real life. If you want to get better at jumping, just jump everywhere that
Yeah.
you go.
It's true. It's true. Start doing it right
Stop
now,
it right now. You
wherever you
become
are.
an expert jumper.
Yep, today's the day. Start.
That's if I could name a single long jumper, I could just make a great joke about that being how they started out.
While you're already at home listening to this, jumping up and down, just imagine that Steve had thought of that joke and laughed.
There was that curly-haired redhead guy who did it for Team GB, didn't he? He was good. Well done.
He was good.
Yeah.
Good lad.
Yeah. I'm gonna look him up when I go home.
But yeah, it's just really nice. Like you get like it's like, hey, well done, you got an agility point because you're really good at like running around. But then when it does that, because you are going to just be jumping and running and climbing anyway, because you have to, for reasons I'll explain in a bit.
Because it's zombies.
Yeah. Well, also because it's basically zombies can be a problem. But at first I was like, there aren't many zombies, but then occasionally, for some reason...
Bees, the real problem.
Shitloads of them.
No, it's not bees,
It's not
is it?
But you have some bits where, like, there are shitloads of zombies. Like, and it's just like, fuck, how do I... And all you can do is just climb on top of a building. Because you actually saw what happened to me when you've got, like, 3 or 4 of them around you. It's just like, you're in big trouble. You're dead. So often, it's just best to not stop and fight. Because your weapons degrade really quickly. What's the point in killing everything along the way? Just run past it, run the roofs. But you have to actually do the climbing because at night, and the whole premise of the game, really, Dying Light thing, is this idea of at night you have special infected zombies that will come out and these guys chase you. And what's nice about it is if you try and fight them, you almost always die. In fact, maybe at the end of the game, if you've got amazing weapon stuff, you might be able to fight them a bit. But right now, it's just like, no, they just kill you. So you have to run away. But they run faster than you do, which means you need to be doing all this like climbing and running and leaping on stuff.
Yeah.
And it means you have genuinely frantic moments. And it's like really nice in the same way that zombie movies are great. You know, you have that bit where somebody's just running down a road and they're just looking for like somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's just walls either side of them. And they just realise they're trapped. And it's that terror of being like, oh God, where do I go?
Oh, that's cool. So you're sort of looking for walls to get over and buildings to climb up and stuff?
Yeah, because sometimes when it's night, I had a bit where it's like, I got genuine fear where it's like, oh, night's starting in about 2 minutes. And then I was like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like, I'm not anywhere near any buildings. And it's like, oh God.
You're in like an open, flat area.
If you're in an open area, like, you don't want to be in an open area.
The other thing I enjoyed about what I saw was that it's got pitch black night. Like, without your torch on, you can't see a thing in front of you.
It's so dark. It's really pitch black. And it does that thing of, because you can see where the fast zombies are on the map, it does a little radar thing. It almost means sometimes you get so fixated on those guys that you forget that there are also loads of zombies there.
Normal zombies.
And I had a bit at one point where I had to go and switch on a generator and a big power thing. And the way I got into it was like, I had to like leap off from like a rock nearby. But once I was in, I couldn't get back out because it was all like razor wire fences. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, right, I was watching them all moving around. I thought, right, there's none of the infected zombies anywhere nearby. I'll just leap in. Leapt in and just suddenly got up and I was like 10 zombies. Like I was like, oh God, like this place is full of normal ones. And just having this mad thing of like having to climb on top of the generators and just leaping around like whilst quickly hoping you're not going to get noticed. But even as I was saying the whole thing of running away, I was playing it earlier and I was just sprinting and I had 5 of the infected guys chasing me. And I was just running along. And this fence was like a chain link fence with razor wire at the top, and you can't climb them. And so it's just like just running along, being like, "Come on, like give me something to climb." Until eventually, I just see this van in front of me, and I literally just leap up onto the bonnet of the van, and then just in the second jump, just vault over the fence, and then I'm just like, literally, just my heart in my chest, just relief of being like, "Oh God, I got away." Like, but you have lots of moments in the game, especially at night, where because you can die so easily and so quickly, you just have moments where you just become convinced you're going to die. You're like, I'm going to die, I can't get away. And then just managing to get away and being like, holy shit, I got away. Like,
the thing, it's got like a Dark Souls invasion thing where other players can come into your game, right?
It does. The only time that's happened to me was when we were talking in the kitchen and somebody just came to my game and repeatedly killed me.
Yeah. You made me a quiche and we came in to see that someone had beaten you 10-0.
What kind of a man murders another man when he's making a quiche?
Spending 9 minutes killing you repeatedly while you're away from your keyboard.
He probably got some great XP for that, I guess, or something. Yeah, it's got the classic, like, same as Dead Island, you can have, like, 4-player co-op in the same world. And it has, like, I haven't actually seen what they are yet, but it's got, like, dynamic competitions, which I presume are going to be things like, again, one of the reasons I like that running is important at night, because if you're not running and jumping and being creative and looking around you for where to go next, then you're going to get killed. But in the day, it does this thing of occasionally being like, oh, there's an airdrop, and it'll just be like a blue mark on you, and you'll see a plane fly above you and drop a thing, and there'll be a flare. And then it's this thing of like, you basically, if you want to get it, you just got to start running as quickly as you can. Because if you get there really quickly, you'll just get to the airdrop and you'll just get the goodies in there. If you get there slightly too slowly, you'll get there and there'll be a gang of other people there who are trying to get it as well, and you'll have to kill them first. But if you're any later, then it just gets taken by somebody else. So it is this thing of being like, run. And it does that really awesome thing that Burnout Paradise does. Of you, like, it's not a very big area, so you start to learn the area and you start to know where you are and go, ooh, I can turn down left here and there's like a shortcut, or like, oh, I can run over here and leap. And it does this thing like, you know, in Assassin's Creed with like the whole, like, you can leap from almost any height as long as you land in a hay bale.
Yeah.
It's got that with bin bags.
You can just jump into bin bags.
Yeah. So if you see blue bin bags or a dumpster,
Filled or empty.
well, presumably
jump into
filled.
empty bin bags.
That'd be amazing.
Maybe just like a roll of 500 bin bags.
Just throw them out and then I'm invincible. But yeah, if you leap and land on them, then so sometimes you'll see like a little like plank of wood, and it is very much like Burnout Paradise. If you see a plank of wood resting on the side of like,
you know, you should definitely go
know
over
it's
it.
going to be a jump, and
Yeah.
you know that you jump and you'll land, and it's really good when you get away from a crowd by doing that.
Assassin's Creed, some people, maybe most people know it, I felt very clever when I figured it out, that the hay bales are signified by little doves on the ledges.
Yes.
So I felt very clever when I figured that out. I'm probably people know that. It's probably quite common knowledge.
Probably quite common knowledge now. I think your golden banana guru days are over, Steve.
Yeah, we're about 9 games into the Assassin's Creed series. It's a bit late to be coming up with these little revelations.
It's time for Steve's tip corner.
Yeah, if you're ever on a rooftop and you see some birds hanging out on a ledge, that means there's a hay bale below you.
Fascinating.
Or a pile of leaves.
I think the thing that's amazing about this, though, because it's like it borrows a bunch of stuff. So you've got the nighttime element. It's very much like Dragon's Dogma, just in that thing of being like, it rewards you with double experience for everything you do when you're out and about. So it kind of teases you, being like, go on, stay out.
Well, you get double experience at night.
Yes. But
That's true of real life as well,
it's
Max.
true. It's true.
All of your experiences are intensified in the night time.
Sort of true. There's actual truth to that. But it has, obviously, if you die, then you actually lose some experience as well. So it's a bit of a gamble.
It's also true of real life.
Yeah, you lose a lot. All of it.
Yeah, pretty
From that
much
point
all of it.
onwards, that's it. Game over. But what's really nice about the way it steals the kind of climbing and leaping stuff from, like, is it's not that holding down R1, because you used R1 to do jumping and grabbing, which I thought was really weird at first. I was like, you use such a functional, but it makes a lot of sense because it's such an integral part of the game. But what's really nice about the climbing is it's like you can pretty much climb anything that looks like you should be able to climb it, but at the same time, it's not like you just don't just hold down a button and it does it for you.
Yeah.
And you never feel like it's automated. And it also means like it's very fallible, like, but in a way that's good, in a way that, like, if you mess up a jump, it won't do that thing of being like, oh, he wants to jump from this ledge to this ledge. You know, Assassin's Creed is famous for that now.
Oh, it'll just like point you off in a random
Just
direction.
watching him vault
Yeah.
on stuff perfectly. In this, if you don't quite make a jump, or if you don't quite aim at the ledge that you want to grab onto properly, you'll just fall. And sometimes it means that when you do mess up things, you mess up things in really spectacular ways. I had a bit where actually I was just running away from a bunch of zombies, and there was a chain link fence at the end, and it was like covered with a tarpaulin, so I couldn't see what was behind it. And there was loads of zombies, so I used my ability to like just tap the jump thing before you get to a zombie, and you basically vault off the zombie and you leap really high into the air, but then went over the fence, and then at the other end of the fence was a train track which was about 20 feet down. So then it's just this thing of going crunch. I'm just about surviving.
Because Assassin's Creed does almost everything to prevent you from jumping to your own death.
Yes.
It's like he'll stop at a ledge and go, whoa.
Whereas this, if you
Are you sure you want to jump off this one?
But this is like, if you do a massive jump and then over that fence is a cliff, you're dead. Like,
Does it ever feel like... Because I think with something like that, I would blame the game more often than is fair. I'd go, that's the game's fault. I didn't mean to jump like that.
No, there are a couple of things where you feel like, oh, I should be able to climb that maybe. But it's very rare that you think, why can't I climb this? It's most things you can climb, and most things when you do a jump, it's because like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that jump. You should have looked where you were going first. But you have that thing like, I remember everyone talked about with Tomb Raider, that sense of like when there's bits where you climb things, everyone got a sense of vertigo. And I thought it was bollocks because it was all very Assassin's Creedy. But in this, you actually have to climb the radio towers. And you had that in Far Cry 4 as well, that sense of getting really high.
Yeah.
But in this, the fact that you're physically clambering these things, and they've started to already have some bits where you have to do like proper climbing, like you have to leap onto bars and climb up. It's like, it gets really, really like heart in chest vertigo because you
can slip up.
you can
and
fall.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you do it wrong, you will fall, and it's
Like
intense.
To keep bringing it back to Assassin's Creed, which is I guess the primo parkour simulator.
Yeah.
Like you go to the top of the highest tower in a city, you don't feel like you're in any danger of falling off.
Well, all they ever really did in Assassin's Creed to make it more interesting with the climbing was there are some towers where you can't just hold down forward and hold down R.
Yeah, you'd have to
You have to
find
maybe
your
at
way
one
around,
point it would
wouldn't you?
stop, and you
Yeah.
go, "Why has it stopped?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to go left a bit."
It's like a very, very gentle puzzle.
Yeah.
Whereas I think
this
Assassin's they tried
yeah.
to make it a bit more nuanced, didn't they? With like they would give you some manual controls over what was happening when you were running and jumping, because they had those like challenge modes where it was all set in virtual reality, and you'd have to use some of the manual controls to get your time down when you're doing like running up walls and jumping at specific moments and stuff.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, you could do like special big jumps and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. But then in the main game, that was never really employed because it is a really tricky game to control. If you're watching someone who's never played many games, trying to pick up and play Assassin's Creed, it's a tricky game for a lot of people, even with the auto run.
That's the thing. There's a lot of stuff you can do in it, and it's a bit like it can be a bit confused.
Well, the whole notion of having like, holding down a shoulder button to unlock a new context of moves, which is what they have. Like when you're not holding down, I'm trying to get it in my head. It's like the left trigger. You're in stealth mode and you're shuffling between people, and you're not going to do anything that's out of the ordinary. It's going to draw attention to yourself. And you hold down the left trigger. You're sprinting. You're running. You're stabbing people. You're elbowing old ladies in the face and stuff. That just as a concept, that was quite new when Assassin's Creed invented it. Like I don't think any game had really done that before, and they've carried it on. And now it's just like accepted by players that that's how Assassin's Creed works. But for new players, it's really quite tricky.
Yeah.
I watched someone try to play the new Assassin's Creed, and so they were like, "Can't do it. I can't work out the controls."
Yeah.
People forget that people who don't play many games find it difficult to play
No,
games.
that is very true. Very true. Especially when I was trying to get my mum to play some stuff that involved her just like moving with WAS and D. I was trying to get my mum to play Proteus, and I didn't really account for just how hard she would find it to do moving and looking at the same time. Whereas to us, that's just like, well, yeah, that's just basic. Like, of course you can do that.
Yeah,
But you forget.
I think I had my boyfriend playing Portal 2 because he just finished Portal. I was like, oh, you have to just watch play the intro to Portal 2 so you can see how different a game it is and how you'll get some of Stephen Merchant's voice acting in there, and you'll really enjoy it. And I watched him play it, and just simple things like he wasn't looking in the right place. I was like, oh, just look over there, that wall. You're supposed to be looking. It's a joke happening right now, and you're not looking at it. You're looking at the floor. Why are you looking at the floor? It's because someone's talking. And if someone's talking to you in a game, you stop moving and listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And this is how most people play games, unless you've grown up with it and you know how games work.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult just to make people look in the right direction in a game.
You do forget how much just nuance there is with these things. But
Lucky us. Lucky that
Lucky
we're not shit at games.
aren't we brilliant at video games? But yeah, I think Dying Light is going to be a big hit. I'm very surprised by it. It's annoying because actually at the moment you can only get it in digital download, I think.
Right.
And it's out in retail like in a month or something. It's really annoying though because digital download is really expensive. It's like 55 quid. I was kindly given a code by a friend of mine, a guy called Zach Islam, who just said, I've got a spare code for it. Do you want it on PS4? And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll have a look at it. So it's the sort of game where it's like, it's really good, but probably wait until it's like 35 quid instead of 50 because it's like, it's good, but it's not 50 quid.
It's on PC as well.
It's on PC as well, but I've heard that PC can have some issues with it. I think, I don't know what's going on. It's worth looking it up if you're a PC gamer because I've heard some people saying, oh, it's got problems. Which doesn't surprise me because it's still a bit shonky, you know? It's like, it's a pretty good looking game, but it's still like, it's wonky. But it just amazes me how much they've managed to capture the spirit of like zombie survival in a way that most games don't manage to. Like just even like the case of like going through cupboards and looking for stuff feels very Fallout 3. And I love that in Fallout 3, just being like, what's in this kitchen? What's in the fridge? And also the fact that you have like things like locked vehicles that you'll see like an ambulance and a police car and you'll be like, there's probably some good stuff in there, but there's a lot of zombies nearby. But then you're like, I can lure all the zombies away, and then you can like lure the crowd away, or you can just methodically. And this is the point where it felt very much like I was in the TV show The Walking Dead. There was this locked crate that definitely had some good stuff in it, and then like a locked police car and a locked ambulance. And I thought there's going to be some good loot here. So I just got this little crowd of zombies to just follow me over to where some people had made some makeshift spiked barriers. And then when they were all next to it, I just proceeded to just keep just kicking all of the zombies into the spikes until they were all there. It took me about 10, 20 minutes, but it felt like this is what people would do. Like, if you were like a survivor and you needed to go and get some stuff, you wouldn't like, you know, that's what often in the Walking Dead TV series, they don't end up going around being bravado and being like bashing them all to death because you get exhausted. You'd be like, let's just push them all into these spikes.
Into these convenient spikes.
Yeah, like just make use of what's around. And just that sense of like moving through the world and being like, no, it's too dangerous, we need to move on, or being like, there's not many around, let's get this stuff.
Yeah, making those choices.
I've had a few points in it, and it's very rare in a zombie game where you don't feel like you've got the bravado to just rush through. There've been a few bits where I've turned a corner and I've looked at what's there, and I've just been like, stood there for a couple of seconds going, sizing it up, and then just going, no, we're finding another way. Like, and yeah,
that sounds good.
I'm intrigued as to how it goes as it goes on, but to be honest, I was a bit worried that as you go on, it could end up just turning into like a Dead Island style slogfest of just beating up stuff, because at the moment you don't have to do much fighting. There's lots of like explosive barrels and electric water things you can turn on, and like environmental traps. So if you have to kill lots of things for a mission, you can usually find a smart way to do it rather than just getting your hands dirty. But it seems like as you level up later, you get like a grappling hook and stuff, so you can basically Batman it up onto buildings and stuff and do crazy it's got like Dead Rising style drop kicks and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. That was awesome.
It's just really
drop kicking.
It's one of these things where it evokes like so many. It reminds me a bit of Far Cry 2. It reminds me a bit of Fallout 3, a bit of Dragon's Dogma, a bit of Assassin's Creed, and a bit of Dead Rising.
Well, at the very least, it sounds better than Resident Evil Revelations 2.
Tell us about that then.
Well, I played a little bit of episode 1. You play as Barry looking for his daughter Moira, who's on an island. I did not keep up with the story. I'm not sure what was going on.
Barry Burton wasn't ever really a character. He was just a man with a beard, and that was fine.
Yeah, and he had all the best lines in the original game.
I think I've actually just ripped that sentiment off of Andy Kelly, actually, on Twitter, just for the record. But yeah.
He was the guy who said, take this lockpick. Maybe you, Jill, the master of unlocking, could find a use for it. All the classic Resi 1 lines Barry Burton came out with. And now he's back in Revelations 2, and he's got a leading role. But when he gets to this island, he finds... I must have skipped a cutscene because it made no sense to me whatsoever. There's this girl, this like a 9-year-old, 8-year-old girl in a nightie strolls up, looking like she's just strolled out of the ring.
Right.
And Barry's like, what are you doing here, little girl? You shouldn't be here. You wait here on the boat. I'm gonna pop off and find my daughter. And the girl protests and says, oh no, I want to come with you. So it's a co-op thing with you and this little girl. It's basically Resi does The Last of Us.
Well, no, because you had that in Resi 4. She wasn't a little girl, but it was that having to look after Ashley.
Yeah.
AKA basically having a woman who you had to tell to hide in a bin all of the time.
Hide in the bin. I find that with women generally. If I'm around, I have to tell them to hide in bins constantly.
I've been plagued by an idea I've had for years now. I've always wanted to do like a kind of Where Are They Now thing for Resi 4, in which
probably in a bin,
which you have Leon and Ashley, but they're like a couple and they're going on dog walks or something. But then he keeps just being like Ashley,
gets in
like,
the bin.
No, she just instinctively goes and hides in bins. Like, you don't have to do that anymore. But I think, yeah.
In Revelation C, you can take direct control.
Can you hide women in the bins?
She doesn't hide in the bins, but she's got this really weird mechanic where she, for unexplained reasons, probably explained later on, she's probably been experimented on by Umbrella. I'm going to guess that that's happened to this girl. She can sense where all the zombies are. She can also sense where items are. She see like a little twinkling thing on a shelf, and Barry can't see these things. If you hold down the left trigger, she points, and she'll point at these. And once she points at a twinkly thing, then Barry, you can switch back to Barry and go pick it up, and it's like handgun ammo or a herb or something.
Well, so you have to switch to another character to make her point.
You have to switch to a little girl, point at a thing, and then switch back to Barry. I'm sure in co-op it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, but who wants to play the person who just points at herbs?
I just ran around pointing at things. It was great.
Oh, that was your role in co-op, or?
No, if you play as the girl, Barry will turn into AI and he'll run around by himself.
Oh, right, and just do the game for you while you point at
things. You
things.
won't shoot anyone. That's the weird thing.
That doesn't sound useful.
No, I got a bit frustrated having to switch between them both, but the pointing was great fun.
Really?
Yeah, it was for a while.
Look at that. Look at that shelf.
Yeah, and then I interviewed the developer and asked him about whether it's fun to play, whether he thinks it's fun to point at all these
Be
things.
the person who points at the thing.
And we were talking about like whether Resident Evil is a violent game. How do you put a little girl in it without making it too
Without
violent?
exposing actual real little girls in the real world to violence directly.
Yeah. Don't you feel like all little
Do you
girls
not
are going
realise
to?
that little girls are going to watch this and they're going to go out into the world and try and fight zombies?
He said the main concern is that they just couldn't give her a gun because that would get them banned in a lot of countries.
Really? How
Yeah.
little is this little girl?
She's like 8 years old.
Oh, right, no, fair enough. Don't give her a gun.
Yeah,
I've changed my
just
mind.
Don't give her a gun.
Now wondering in my own head, what's the point at which I think it's okay, yeah, give her a gun.
Well, it's like Ellie in The Last of Us. What, she's like 15?
Yeah.
She gets a gun.
Yeah, she does, and she was amazing with the bow and arrow.
Yeah. But I guess there's a lot more context to that, and like Thingy doesn't want to give her a gun for a very long time. So there's a bit more responsibility going on there, isn't there?
Well, I think the thing about The Last of Us, and I talked about this in the video I made about it quite a lot, it's probably, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but it's probably safer to say this now than it was at the time. Just the fact that I thought was really clever about that is the early stage of The Last of Us is you're almost tricked into getting into Joel's mindset because he's the main character and he's like really worried about Ellie and he thinks she's in danger and he basically treats her like she's a bit useless and a bit at risk. But then actually you start to play as Ellie, you realise that's not true. And actually she's like, yeah, in some regards she's weaker. Like, you know, when she's got like a bunch of guys like trying to beat her up, like she's very weak physically. But she's incredibly dangerous and incredibly deadly.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, and then I like the way that kind of played into the overall story of the game.
Has to develop throughout the course of the game, and like the father-daughter relationship between Joel and Ellie is obvious from the outset.
Yeah.
Should we talk about what happens at the very beginning? Well, you don't even have to, but there's an obvious sort of, if you have an older man and a young girl, that sort of relationship is naturally going to come about in a protective sort of way.
Absolutely.
And then the way that develops over the course of the game is just amazing.
What I loved about it was the fact that it's that that thing of you kind of buy into this thing of being like, yeah, you know, you need to protect her, and then actually you kind of realize, actually, you don't really need to protect her that much. She's quite capable of protecting herself, and then you gradually realize that actually it's not so much you being the hero, it's actually like Joel's decision to protect her and look after her is actually kind of weirdly selfish. It's partly for him.
Yeah.
It's partly like he needs to do this and he needs to feel
there
like
are certain sort of
figure.
vulnerabilities that come about for that towards the end of the game.
And I just thought that was fascinating, the way that it's like, actually, you're not like...
So that's my hot tip for a classic game, a little known game called The Last of Us. I reckon you should just try it out. I think you might
give
like
it out.
it.
Give it a go. It's a classic.
Because it turned into quite a zombie-themed episode.
And if you don't manage to find all of the golden bananas in The Last of Us,
just come to me.
Do come back.
I have got 500 pages of printed out walkthrough.
You're at the bit where it's snowy. Let me have a quick look. No, just wait a minute.
Just hold on.
I think it's this bit.
And it's those like old perforated printed out sheets that are all tied together like in a big zigzag. We've got to flip through them all.
Flipping them over your head like a mad scientist.
Yeah, that's genuinely what they were printed out on as well.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, those like financial printers, weren't they?
Yeah, they made amazing sounds when they were printed.
Yeah.
That's the sound they made.
That's a great jingle for a printer-based podcast. There must be one. One. But yeah, it has ended up being a very weirdly zombie-themed episode, which is interesting actually because only a couple of episodes ago in the New Year one we talked about Zombies Run or Run. I think it's Zombies Run rather than Run Zombies.
Oh, it's the exercise app.
The exercise app on the iPhone and on Android. And I actually just want to quickly say thank you very much for everyone. We did at the end of that. We had a little thing saying, hey, if you've already tried it out and you like it, let us know. Or if you want to try it out, you're gonna, then come and drop us a line and tell us about it. And actually, we were a bit worried about putting that one up because we thought, everyone might be like, oh, I listened to Gabe's podcast because I like video games. I don't want to listen to you talking about fitness. This is bullshit. And yeah, actually, the response was entirely different. We had tons of people saying that they really got into either climbing or doing running with this app. And so good ones for you. Most
job.
people might have given it up by the end of January, but it doesn't matter. If you've got people out running once and pretending they were being chased by zombies, then sod it. But yeah, I should have a video about Dying Light up early next week, I think, because it's very good. I can't believe it's very good. I almost didn't want it to be very good, just because Techland in the past have been such an odious bunch in terms of the stuff they've done.
Well, this is interesting. I think it's the finger of blame can be pointed in a number of different ways. It can either go. So we're talking about the promotional stuff they did around Dead Island.
Not so much that. It was more like a lot of the stuff they've made. Like there's still, and one thing that does annoy me about Dying Light, just because it's like, well, A, the characterization and voiceover is quite bad. B, like, even though you are on a kind of, it doesn't feel like you're in a tropical setting, right? But it's clearly like the weather's not bad where you are. It's quite nice. But like almost all of the female zombies you get are in bikinis.
Really?
And it's just like, why? Like, it's like, why? It's this really odd thing about clearly it's like, it's in some ways quite interesting because it's like, Techland aren't actually a complete shit developer. They actually have some real talent. They've made a really good game here. I'm really impressed, and I need to say that. But at the same time, at first you kind of start playing it and you think, this is just like their kind of values toned down a bit with Warner Brothers cash level sheen. Like everything is just nicer. And there's still parts that come through and you sort of think, yeah, like, this is still a bit like, it's a bit weird. Like, it's like, this is kind of, but yeah, they had that, and they also did, remember they did, what's that bloody one? Call of Juarez, the cartel.
And it had that achievement, didn't it, that was taken out?
There was in Dead Island, there was like, I can't remember what it was, but it was basically a kind of like,
something, fuck bitches.
Yeah, it was like an achievement which they changed the name of it, but they'd left some of the code in or something that was like, basically a kind of like, weirdly misogynistic nastiness that didn't get in the final game, but was clearly an underlying.
Give them
thing.
credit for changing it, at least.
Yeah, fair enough, they did change it. But then a lot of their games have been like that, and it's just sort of this sort of like, who gives a fuck? And they did play on that with the marketing of Dead Island Riptide, when you could get a decapitated.
It was a mutilated corpse of a woman.
Mutilated, sexy woman.
Just the tits and shoulders, basically.
It was really horrible.
It was nasty, and they really played on the controversy. They loved winding everyone up about it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, is that was Deep Silver, and Deep Silver are still making Dead Island games and stuff, and I still think that Deep Silver generally as a company are just.
The way I felt about that was, I felt bad for the developers because they'd made quite a decent, well, not great game, but they'd made a good game that didn't deserve to be associated with something so fucking odious.
That's the thing. I think, they've been like, they've been a bit problematic in the past, especially to do with women. It's like this sort of, and I don't know, it's maybe just some old-fashioned sensibilities. Sometimes you kind of find with some Eastern European devs, like can be a bit of more like old-fashioned sensibilities towards women, which can be a bit like, kind of like, not always, but sometimes it's like.
I think it's true. I think, in my experience as well, Eastern European developers have fewer women working there as well, in terms of, certainly in the roles where they're journalist facing.
Yeah.
I'm often surprised if I find a lady representing an Eastern European game.
But it's just one of those things where Dying Light, it's like, okay, you guys, like, you've been given a proper budget here, clearly. You've been given a proper project, and you've given a proper chance by Warner Brothers. And, fair enough, like, it's still a bit shonky, but you've nailed it. It's just a bit like one of these things where I wonder how much Warner Brothers had control over the aesthetic and tone of the game and stuff, but it's just simple stuff like having all of the zombies in bikinis. You sort of think, you've actually, like, you've let yourself down there. Like, this could have been a bit of a classic, but it's like, why have you... It's just weird. It's like, occasionally the plot and the elements of the world are so bad that you just sort of think,
it seemed like
guys, like...
It seemed like the setting was more shantytown than, like,
tropical.
Holiday resort.
Yeah, it is. It's not a holiday resort.
Yeah.
It's like a shantytown, and it's like, maybe it gets really hot here, but I don't know. I don't want to feel like I'm going on about it forever, because it's not that important.
It doesn't spoil your enjoyment of clobbering these people to death.
It absolutely doesn't. It's just this weird thing of being like, hey, Techland, you guys have really got your shit together. Have you still got like one guy who works in art?
Just one guy who keeps doing this.
It just feels like, have you just got like some really pervy dudes in your art department or something? Like, maybe just have a word. Just be like, yeah, sure, have some in bikinis, but maybe not all of them. I mean, I'm saying that there probably are women that don't have them on, but it's
I know,
like,
when I was watching you playing, the zombies I saw were wearing skirts that went down to their shins. So
really?
I thought it was quite reserved.
Quite prudish.
Yeah, quite prudish.
Maybe it's not. It's clearly not all of them, but
I was getting excited by seeing some hot zombie ankles.
God, let's get some ankles. But no, it's very good. No, I think it's going to be a real surprise, because I think everybody in the world, including myself, was expecting it to be total shit.
Yes.
Anyway, let's have some questions. First of all, let's have an easy one from William Palmer, who asks, are podcasts art?
No.
No.
Art is limited to paintings, statues.
Yeah.
That's it. It's got to be a painting or a statue, and it has to go in a museum.
Yeah.
Podcasts aren't that.
You can't put podcasts in a museum. They fall off the podiums.
Yeah, you can't nail a sound to a wall.
You can't, actually, unless you put it in a jar. But then you can't nail jars to walls either because they're made of glass and nails really don't
and
gel with that
then
stuff.
the podcast would come out all at once.
Oh, God, nightmare.
If it's an hour-long podcast, it's going to be loud.
Everyone's going to be covered in it. Hugh Jenkins asks, when are you two going to kiss? We've already kissed. That happened in one of the Matt and Steve.
I think it was episode 11 of Matt and Steve's Amazing Week.
Yeah.
When I give Matt a peck on the cheek.
Yeah, so that's actually a definitive answer for you. It's already happened. Wake up, Hugh. Stuart Neal says, what console has the best number of games to quality of games ratio? I didn't... No, hang on. I'm reading from the wrong... Oh, God. I've let...
You read a question that you hadn't favorited.
I read a question I hadn't favorited.
I read that. I just didn't know. I thought that's not a metric that makes any sense.
Oh, no, I know. That's the thing is, I'm really sorry, Stuart, but I favourite the questions that we're going to ask, and I haven't favoured this one because...
You've slipped through the net, Stu.
You've slipped through... And I don't want to be rude, right? I don't want to be rude about this, but to be blunt, it's kind of a question that gets a bit too mathsy.
Well, I mean, why do you care how many shit games are on a system? I mean, because like you could say like DS has some amazing games, but there's so much shovelware by Ubisoft, like My Little Pony Farm with teddy bears that I love. They shovel lots of weird stuff on there, but that doesn't make the DS any worse. Just having games, just don't buy those games.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is a better question is why does it matter? Yeah, I mean, like at the moment I'm really loving my PS Vita, but I'm aware that it's probably not as good as a 3DS.
Yeah,
but I really like it.
This is why your question wasn't true.
That's why I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry, Stuart. I hope you don't take too much offence. Anyway, this is a good question from Jesse Fox. That's his actual name. It's spelled Fuchs. I'm not being unnecessarily rude. Has learning... This is a question for you more than anyone else because I don't know how to do this. Has learning how to drive an actual car affected your perception of driving in games?
As hackneyed as it sounds, it kind of has. Like, so I recently just got my driving license, and playing certainly driving simulator games, I do find myself thinking more about how cars work and how wheels go around and how cornerings happens. Not too much. In fact, I would say the opposite is true. I think driving games have affected how I feel about driving in real life a lot more. I drove a race car, and it felt nothing like driving in a video game. So that was surprising when I tried to do that in real life.
I hear that a lot. I remember there was a period where lots of racing games were still in existence, and I remember going on lots of studio tours, and a common thing when you're on a studio tour for a racing game is them going like, yeah, we always have fans saying that like, oh, you need to make the cars sound more like cars. They make the sports cars really realistic, and when they make it so that when you're driving a sports car, it actually handles exactly like a sports car does, and it sounds exactly like the car does, people think it's wrong because it's like it doesn't feel right.
I think when you drive a sports car, I mean, it looks visually, it can look a lot like a video game. The way that corners come up to you, whether you see a corner approaching, but there's something quite real. The sense that you can die very easily and quickly in a ball of fire.
I get that in real cars. I get that in normal cars. Like not even
as a passenger.
Not as a passenger. I think as a passenger I'm fine. I sort of part of my brain just goes, doesn't matter, you're not in control. It's like life mode, you know? Like, yes, I could die at any minute, but I'm not in control of it, so I'm not going to stress out. As soon as I'm in direct control of my life or death, I don't like that. That's stressful. And that's why I don't drive. But yeah, also at the moment I kind of feel like the whole driving thing, like thinking about how... I was trying to play Elite, right? And I tried for about an hour, and it's just so complicated that I just sort of think, you know what? I can't drive a car, right? I can't drive a car. Why am I trying to drive a spaceship? Right? So I think, if anything, I'm going to go like start maybe on like Euro Truck Simulator 2 first. Just learn how to drive a truck. And then maybe if I get really good at driving a truck, then I can graduate.
That's interesting you mentioned Euro Truck Simulator, because that is one game that has been affected by taking my driving test.
Do you feel you're better at that game now?
I check my mirrors in that game like I check mirrors in a real car, and I never did that before I started taking driving lessons. So that's testament to that game being really realistic.
Do you have like cyclists you can kill and stuff? In
No, they should add cyclists that you can run over in your truck.
That'd be really harrowing.
Because that's what truck drivers do.
Yes, you fuckers. Fucking HGV bastards. No, but seriously, if you are a truck
Please
driver
drive
in the
safely.
London area, please stop killing cyclists at
And check your
roundabouts.
blind spots.
It's very upsetting. Julian Benson asks, this is a very good question. I don't know how to answer it, but he says, what government positions do you want to see filled by Valve employees? This is, of course, a reference to the fact that
The Greek finance minister.
is somebody who used to work as Valve's economist.
Yes.
Although, to be fair, he actually has spent more of his life doing normal economics.
Oh yeah, I mean Valve hired what do you call people who like a consultant?
Yeah.
They are consultants
I remember
for
at the time it being
politicians.
like, oh wow. Like
So it was stranger that you worked for Valve than
That's
him working
basically it.
for the Greek government. But
Mind you, I don't know. I sort of feel like consistently, Gabe Newell is just such. He's such a cool guy. Like whenever he approaches something, whenever there's something, whatever he says, when he stands up and says stuff, you just sort of think, yeah, you're like, you know what you're doing.
he's sort of like the Elon Musk of video games, isn't he?
So I think he should be the Prime Minister of England.
I wouldn't get that.
Let's ship him over. Come on, we'll give it a go. What's the worst that can happen?
I thought of some jokes about Greek's finance minister being being a next games developer.
Yeah.
You could have a joke which is, oh, why don't they use hats as a new currency?
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard that one.
There's another joke that you could do, which is, oh, where did all of Greece's money go? Did he run into some spikes, and all the money fell out of him?
Like the rings, the Sonic rings.
Like in Sonic.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Those are my two jokes. I'm still working on them.
Well, I've got one like maybe if the Greek finance minister came over to England and was the chancellor of the chancellor of the Exchequer, that when he brings out the little red box for the budget, if you wanted to see what the budget was, you'd have to pay £1.59 for a key.
That's good.
See?
Yeah, that's also good.
That's actually a joke, isn't it?
There's 3 jokes.
Anyway, there's 3 jokes. You can just go use them in there.
That means you can tag this as comedy on iTunes.
I like the way that we've just got to the point where we just think about making jokes so much that we weren't even telling jokes then. We were just blueprinting.
These are blueprints for some
There you
jokes
are.
that you can have those.
Yeah, you weren't going to laugh whilst you were listening to that. That's fine, but you can make somebody laugh by taking those
Just
jokes.
refine it. We're giving you unrefined joke ore.
Yeah, I think the key one could have been better, but there's something there. There's definitely something there. Anyway, Tom Bickmore asks. He says it's Steve, so I have to ask: best and worst video game dogs.
Best video game dog is Missile from the DS. I guess you call it point and click puzzle adventure. Ghost Trick.
Yeah.
Yes. Missile is a little girl's dog who can talk to ghosts. It turns out you play a ghost who can rewind the last, I think it's 45 seconds before someone dies, and you can manipulate the environment in sort of like a Final Destination kind of way, where you're like nudging objects to hit into other objects to try and prevent this person from dying, or to change the outcome of an event. And Missile, who's obviously very distressed at the fact that her owner, or his owner, I'm not sure of the gender of this dog, I would say her owner, has died. She really wants to try very hard to help you out. And it's really quite adorable.
I really need to play Ghost Trick.
It was originally for DS. I think it's a Capcom game, and now
I think it is,
it's available on iPhone.
Yeah, and I've heard really, really good things about it. I've been listening to a lot of the BitSocket podcasts recently, and they always sing its praises.
Genuinely one of my favorite handheld games ever.
Yeah.
The animation, the character models are all 3D, but they were reduced down to the DS's resolution in a very deliberate way that gave them like a 3D pixel style.
I know what you mean.
And it was like, it just worked so well. The animation is fantastic. There are characters who sort of dance. There was one character who dances everywhere, and just watching him move it's
jazzy as fuck?
It's jazzy. If you were going to describe games as art, this is one game I'd go look at the way this character moves around.
Oh right, so it's a painting.
It's You could nail a DS to a wall.
Okay.
So
Okay. Fine.
games can be art as long as they're handheld games because you can nail them to walls.
To a wall. Yeah. No, of course.
It's if you have a chance to try it out, go for it. It's an incredible game.
I'm gonna get that one on my list actually because it keeps coming back to haunt me. Oh, that was a pun. That was an accidental pun. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
It's genuinely accidental.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I get really annoyed. I make awful accidental puns all the time, and I feel like I have to rectify it immediately. It's like when you say something offensive and then go, "No, I didn't mean that." Like I didn't mean to that pun. I don't know. I just feel like maybe it's all these years of, well, not years, but all that time working on magazines just makes you feel dirty about puns afterwards. I didn't mean to make that pun.
Yeah.
It has to be a really good pun.
Well, because it would be awful if you meant it and you thought it was funny. That's why you have to backtrack so quickly.
I know, that's it. I don't want people to think I like puns that much. And finally, I like this question. Luke Summerhays asks, what game has best made you feel like you're in Star Trek?
Star Trek game?
Star Trek game.
Star Trek The Next Generation on the SNES.
Which one was that? Because I played a Star Trek Next Generation like point and click on the PC.
You could choose which systems you were going to warp to, and then you could beam down to the planets and go on adventures.
But what, I mean, that's what it says on the back of the box, Steve. Like, how does it play? I'm just intrigued because I played, like I say, I played a point and click Star Trek game on the PC ages ago. I don't know what it's called, but I'm trying to think it's the same one.
So when you're on the ship, it's kind of point and click. It's basically an elaborate menu screen. The bridge, you can have a cursor and you point at the briefing room to go on a mission, and the map screen to go to look at your system.
But what do you do with the
stuff.
missions?
You go down. You have your away team, and it's a top-down shooter essentially.
Nah, it's a different game. I was just wondering if it was the same one, but it probably wasn't because there's been quite a few.
It's all 2D. You might be thinking of I know the one you're thinking of. If it's 3D,
I might Google it. No, it wasn't 3D. It was Star Trek point and click. I'm gonna do the unprofessional point and click.
It is quite an unoriginal answer to what game makes you most feel like you're in Star Trek.
It is. It's incredibly. I'm not going to take it. I'm afraid.
I'm trying to think of very clever answers, but you can't overlook Mass Effect for the feeling of owning a spaceship that can go anywhere.
I think Mass Effect is my answer as well. Specifically Mass Effect 2.
So you've got a bridge.
Mass Effect 2, I think it was called Star Trek A Final Unity.
Final Unity?
I think, was this it?
Oh, look at that.
I think it might have been.
Is that Riker? I could spot Riker a mile away.
This was it. I played this one. Yeah, you can... Oh, yeah, she's dead. We're just watching a video now and commentating over it. This is like YouTube.
Someone's had a dilithium crystal fall right on them.
Uh-oh. Yeah, it was kind of like 3D graphics, but I just remember it being really hard because it was like a point and click, but you had multiple characters, and yeah, like you had all of the things. You had the Star Trek gun, the Star Trek scanner, Star Trek walkie-talkie, all of the gadgets they love on the Star Trek ship.
Look at Worf. You're just standing like a little dainty princess.
The animations in it are somehow both amazing and terrible at the same time.
I'm going to check that out. That's called Star Trek A Final Unity.
It's really something. I remember getting really stuck on it. Again, like I got stuck on all point and clicks. But yeah, Mass Effect 2 I really loved because it did that like episodic thing of it. Like it felt like Star Trek, and the fact that it was like you land on a planet and then
Yeah, you'd have like a little mini adventure on a planet. But
there was actually a bit in Mass Effect 1 which felt more like Star Trek. That place with the underground plant, the telepathic plant. You remember?
Yes.
That was like that was when I realised I loved Mass Effect. I think actually that bit when you like go down to a planet and you're like, hey, I'm a captain from a ship. What's going down here? And everyone's like, nothing's going down here. Everything is fine.
Well, I bet something's going down here.
Something is definitely going down
Otherwise,
here.
why are we here?
Yeah. And it just, everyone acting a bit oddly and being like, what's going on? And then having the bit at the end of the episode where it's like, oh, it's a telepathic plant. We've got to stop it.
And then there's some sort of moralizing, and everyone learns a lesson and goes back to the ship.
It's Mass Effect is it's like it completely robs like Babylon 5's like kind of setting in terms of like lots of like the idea of like humans being this fringe race having to prove themselves and stuff. But then the how the game actually functions was just pure Star Trek.
This is why Star Trek is 50 times better than Star Wars.
Star Trek is really good.
Star Trek, it's all about real life and people and how we interact, and all the different races represent different parts of the human spirit and psyche. the Klingons are the angry ones, and the Vulcans are the logical ones, and then the guys with the big ears, they love money.
And that's it.
And those are the 3 human traits that we've got.
And then those the sexy ones.
The sex ones.
There were sex
The green-skinned ones.
Yeah, there were times where the sex ones got on the ship. I remember those episodes.
Yeah, the quote was, "What the sex ones I've got on the ship."
I remember when I was working a video game last year with Chris Pratt, who's been on the podcast many times. He was like, he started watching all of the Next Generation from scratch just because he hadn't seen. And he was like, I've forgotten how mental it is. It's like in the first few episodes, it's like Data gets seduced by a sex alien.
There's an episode of Star Trek where Picard goes to a planet for whatever reason. Can't get back to the Enterprise. He has to live on this planet for 40 or 50 years. I think it's next to like a dying sun, so it's orbiting around it really quickly. So
that was the film, wasn't
like
it?
Time dilates. I think it was a 2-part special.
Was it?
Oh no, there's another one where he goes into.
Because I'm sure there's a film
in
one
the film. He
with
also lives for a long time. But this is like just in a normal run of the series. He gets trapped on this planet. He lives an entire life there. He has a family, wife and kids. And just as he's about to die, I think it's like Riker comes down. He's all like, "Hey, Captain, we can just beam you back to the ship and make you whatever age you were before." And he's all like, "Yeah, cool, let's do that."
That's bullshit.
And then he never mentions the fact that he's lived an extra 40 or 50 years with people who he's grown to love.
You'd think.
Think that he would might dwell on his mind a little bit.
You'd think that he'd either like maybe be slightly changed by that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'd have some cool ideas. And he'd be like, "Hey guys, I've had this cool idea about a holodeck."
Just 3 episodes later, he might go, when he's like having a conversation, so, "Oh, this reminds me of the second life I lived."
On that planet where I thought I was going to die.
This is why Star Wars is like 50 times better than Star Trek, because it doesn't have these logical inconsistencies.
Oh God, we're trapped in a loop. Which is better? We need to know which is better. But no, I would say actually it's weird. The more I think about it, the more I think that actually BioWare games as a whole just really capture that human sort of fantasy element that Star Trek really nailed. Like I remember that I think it's the first ever episode of Star Trek. Because again, I started watching a bit on Netflix because I was like, let's have a look. I love that it starts off with what's he called? Is it Q? Like at the start, like they've just got out into space and they're like, "Hey, we're having a jolly time. Gonna look at space. It's gonna be pretty interesting, probably." And then out of nowhere, it's like, boom. "Hey, you guys haven't been here before. What are you doing? You're going out into proper space."
Going into proper space.
No, you're not.
Yeah, oh my God.
And then just being like this idea of this thing they don't understand.
Such a good episode.
And then it's like for the rest of the thing, it's like the shadow hanging over the whole thing of this idea of like, there are things out there more infinitely powerful than you.
So you know what happens at the end of that episode?
Yeah,
Remember? He zips them off to the Delta Quadrant and goes, because Picard's like, "No, we can handle whatever the universe has to throw at us." And he goes, "No, you can't, look." And he zips them away. He's like, "Look, it's the Borg. These guys they're going to fuck you up."
Yeah.
And he zips them back. And because the Borg scanned the ship, that's how the Borg knew about humans. And that's why they came over to fuck everything up.
Yeah. That's it. But it just right at the start, this idea of just like dropping you into this horrible thing of just feeling like, yeah, these guys are the heroes. But here's a bunch of stuff that's just infinitely more powerful than, and like, be afraid of it. And I mean, Dragon Age did that really well, I felt, with like all of the demons and stuff. You just being like, just giving you these immediate little flashes of just being like, "Hey, you're doing pretty well, aren't you? Well, look at all this stuff. You don't know what the fuck's going on."
Chrono Trigger did it as well.
Yeah,
Chrono Trigger let you try and
Lavos.
fight the last boss early on.
Yeah, do you want to kill Lavos? You can't.
Go for it if you want.
You can't.
You can't do that.
Chrono Trigger was so good. I do actually find myself thinking this a lot, just staring out the window and being like, why hasn't anyone done like, there's lots of games that do time travel as a puzzle mechanic, being like moving around, but why haven't any games seriously done like that again? Like what Chrono Trigger done of being like going back in time and changing something and then having the world being vastly different.
Yeah.
Like games don't even try to do that.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know, I was really fond of that whole schlocky element. I loved stuff like Sliders when I was a kid. I know it was crap, but it was good.
Yeah, time travel is due a comeback, I think.
I think so.
I think zombies are passé.
We're done with zombies now.
Done with zombies.
Forget this podcast, delete
It's
it.
time travel.
Well, that brings us neatly to the end of the podcast in which zombies have been eradicated from existence, and now all games will be about time travel.
We've time travelled to the end of this episode.
Yeah, an interesting podcast, was mostly about zombies, and then the last 20 minutes were just about Star Trek. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's fine, I enjoyed it, and that's pretty much all that matters. But thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed, you could subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or do it a review. or any of those things. And also, obviously, if you don't know already, then Steve and myself have another podcast,
It's
Regular
called
Features.
Regular Features, so check that out.
It's nothing like this one, but it's quite fun. And have you got anything else you'd like to plug, just for the hell of it?
Just follow me on Twitter,
Yeah. There you
at Mr. Brilliant.
are. That sounds at Mr. Brilliant to
And
me.
some of those jokes about the Greek economy you heard, just the foundations of, in maybe 2 or 3 weeks I'll have refined them, and I'm going to tweet them.
be ready to go to the
They'll be-
wild like doves.
They'll be ready to go.
Doves turning up at a funeral weeks too late.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.